Hello everyone, hi everyone, and welcome to the sixth webinar of this React Nano degree. We keep in the Redux part, as you know. Now this is the week where we should be beginning. You should be starting to work on the Redux project. It has to be delivered over the 8th of June, so we have 1 month for doing it. So during these weeks we will be keeping working on Redux, going deeper with some concepts. Today we will talk about Redux Middleware. Okay, it's almost what you've seen in class, but it's nice to have some another point of view of it and refresh the concepts. So first of all, what's middleware? Some of you might understand the word at when you first listen to it, but in my case, usually it took me a while to learn really what it meant. If you go to the Wikipedia, you see that the definition is like something like middleware is computer software that provides services to software applications beyond those available from the operating system. It can be described as software glue. As we understand here, usually it's meant for something like for operative systems, okay? But it's being used for a long time in programming, developing. So usually I like to use the user definition, my self-definition, that it's software services that glue together separate features in existing software. In other words, something it's in the middle of something. Okay, you see here in the image, it's like the adapter pattern. So that's a middleware, something that it's in between something and glues together two services. Okay. From the point of view in Redux, we have Redux Middleware. That is the point of this webinar. From the official docs from Redux, we have this definition. Is a third-party extension point between dispatching an action and the moment in which the reducer. So as you see in the schema, as you recall, we have an action and it's dispatched to go to the reducer. So it goes in between before it gets really dispatched. No, you see here here would be the middleware. So this is the definition. But why would we like to use this kind of technology? There are a lot of uses, but the most important are like usually if you are using Redux and in the actions in the reducers, you want to do in the action, some side effect or usually like asynchronous request or something like that, redirecting the action. Think about, okay, usually do this action, but in some cases, instead of continuing this action, go back or break the action or go to another action. Also, we want to from one action to launch other actions. Okay, so these are the typical cases where you will be using other libraries or in your projects. These are the three most common cases where you will be using Redux middleware. Okay, so let me check here the chat and everything. So yeah, perfect. Okay, for this lesson, I'm just going to reuse the hello world code I made for explaining Redux. So it's not a big example. I am just adding little ideas there, so you have a simple code where we can do other branches. So in this example, we will go with the examples we saw in class. First, adding a checker. Like I want to check some actions. I want to do some checking before dispatching an action. And usually, the first steps, we are going to implement it by ourselves without using middleware, and later we will add the middleware. Okay, so recalling what we had to do. Remember, we had a hello world application where we were like we had these three buttons where we could add by clicking them we were changing the text that goes after hello world. No, so by default it's hello world everyone, and in this example we could change it into hello world Carlos or hello world from Redux. So as always, you have in the PDF below the branch and the link to the GitHub repo where I do these changes. So what we want to do now is like make a checker where if I try to click Carlos, don't let me hello world me, because it's like very self-centered. So we want to do something like that. Okay, so let's go to the code. Remember, we had components. We had two components: the hello world, where we were showing the text, and the button group, where we were dispatching the actions from the buttons. So before we had we had like basic store. We didn't have the map state props or the connect from the store or the provider. Sorry. So I just kept the example this way without adding advanced things you have seen in class. Remember that it's not the best way to do it like we did there, but for the lesson purposes, I think it's better. So we had an onChange name function where we were dispatching from the store the action set name with the text bind it to the button we click. Okay, so because we want to check what name is clicked, we have to make that checking before dispatching the action. So that's why we have this now new function where we encapsulate the before action, the before store dispatch action, and now we have here the if the action type is this set name, and the action name, the text that it's binded to the button is Carlos, just return don't be so self-centered. And in the rest of the cases, we don't go into the if. So we just store and dispatch the action. As you can see, as you saw in class, doing these kind of things make us to go around our code and change the functions we use. So it's a lot of refactoring. Makes very difficult to test and to escalate our projects. So this is what we would be we will be ending having at the end, like localhost. Remember, it's a project in localhost. I click Carlos button, and we have the alert. Don't be so self-centered. So well, I added the cats button. That's from the next example. But you have to keep in mind that this is a very easy example where they put it in class to do a checking, but we will be seeing other examples. And always keep in mind that middleware will be very, very helpful if you give it a try. Okay. So example 2. This is also something you saw in class, like when you want to do asynchronous calls, you can do them inside before the action. You can do them in component mount. In other ways, you can do dispatch these calls whenever you want, but you will see the benefits of doing them inside Redux. For this example, it's a dumb example because in the hello world, it's difficult to fetch an API. So I just wanted to, depending on the button you click, check in our remote website with pictures on API if there is any picture with related to that text. So that's why I did put the cats button, because usually I think you can have a website that goes with pictures if you don't have pictures of kittens and lovely cats. So as always, we have the branch adding fetch API, and this is what we do in the code. Now we have on change name. Remember, that's the previous function. We had the this.check and dispatch, but before calling that check and dispatch, I just wanted to fetch photos. It's remember that it's a quick example. It's not done for being perfect in all cases. So because maybe in this example you fetch the photos before, but check and dispatch throws an error. So just keep in mind that it's a quick example for you to see things. So let me check the chat. Okay. So as you see, there is a call to fetch photos. That function is the one that will be doing it's a normal function. It does the asynchronous call to the API. It's in pixels. If you want to use this code, you have to get the client ID. It's very easy to register. And later, once it's finished, I just added a component state for the photo, and it has a little, I didn't add it here, but it has a little guard where it's below the buttons. If we have a state photo, it will show the photograph. So also, this was in the previous example was a functional component. Now, because state it's a class component, also you could have been using hooks, but because it's beyond this what we are watching in this nano degree. Of course, if you tell me, please, I want to see hooks example or things about React, advanced React, tell me. So this is the code. It's easy code. It's just I build the fetch photos, and I just called. Okay. So what we have here is now, if we click the cats, we have that beautiful photograph. Okay. So now we are having two parts of our code. One checking function that doesn't let me to change the hello world text into hello world Carlos. Another part of the code that lets me fetch images from an API, and both actions are related to the name, to the hello world button change. Okay, so now that we have these two examples, now we have to add middleware, because Carlos, you are doing a webinar about Redux middleware and you haven't added any middleware. Yeah, that's where we are headed now. We keep in the example 2. I am because I prefer to add first a middleware that is created instead of a custom middleware. I think this is a reverse order that you see in the React in the Red and Degree lessons. But so for fetching an API and doing it inside the actions, I have to add a library. I can add, and in this case, I will be adding thunk. What is redux-thunk? There are a lot of libraries to use with to handling promises, asynchronous calls. You have Redux Saga, Redux Observable, Redux Promise, and Redux-thunk. So, but the Redux-thunk is the most common, simple, and most used library for dealing with this kind of use cases. Remember that actions in Redux are only plain objects, and the actions creators are just functions that return these plain objects. So if you want to do other things like concatenating actions calls or doing side effects, as in this example, fetching an API, we need the possibility of returning functions from these action creators, and this is where this library comes in. These functions are what we call thunk. A thunk is a function, but why it's called thunk? Because it's a function that will return the value that it's calculated on runtime. So that's why, because remember, middleware goes between the action and before it's dispatched to the reducer. So we need to have functions that are run over there. For example, if you go to Redux Saga, you have also that every kind of all types of these thunks or these actions with promises and things like this are run in the same thread. So we have a thread for these things and a thread for the other part of React. So this is where things come into play. So that's why we need thunk for this. Okay, so we need to add thunk. Remember, it's a library, so we add redux-thunk into it, and we need to add. I think it's forgotten here. Yeah, I forgot to add the. Okay, so here we have to go to the store where we create the store, and we have to import thunk. And as the first argument here, it's I forgot to add it here. Let me write apply middleware. For in the third line, that should be here. We have the create store. The create store takes the initial state and the reducers, and as a third argument, it takes the middleware. So if we want to pass it the middleware, we have to we can use the apply middleware function, and in there we pass all the middleware functions or middleware libraries we have. So that's why we should be having like a third argument that would be in the create store call apply middleware parentheses thunk. Okay, I will I will fix it before sharing the link with you. So now, before we had just an action that was set name, just set name, and the text receive the text and created action created and return the action. Now we want to create an action for our action creator and for this new fetch API. So here I create those two action creators. We have the add photo at the end. It's just a normal action creator. It receives the type that would be add photo and the photo URL. Okay, and this is the one that will go into the reducer and will be the one that once we fetch the URL goes into the reducer and adds that photo URL to the state. But the one action creator, or we want to where we want to do. Oh, sorry, I don't know what's something came here. Something. I think it's Slack. So we want to create another action creator, and in this case is fetch photo from API. And as you see, it's a function that returns another function. Okay, so and that part the first part of this action creator we would be dispatching this action from the view. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to close Slack because something is like moving my virtual desktop. Yeah, sorry. So we will be dispatching the action from our user interface with fetch photo from API parenthesis query. That's what we will be doing. But in the implementation, we have that function has inside this other function that gets the dispatch and calls it inside. And this is what we call the thunk. This is the function that will be called whenever the query is solved. So think about, okay, Redux, we have an action dispatched, the fetch photo from API, and inside of it, it has like this fetch from API, from pixels, and it knows, okay, this is going to take a while, so I just leave it there, and when the callback or the promise is resolved, I get dispatched the next action. See, now we have the power of inside an action dispatching another action, and this is the power of using thunk. This is the power of having things inside Redux. There are multiple ways of using API calls. I could have done a more complex example where you have a type for fetching and having like lines for every API call. But I wanted to see different approaches. So in this case, you see, I didn't add the constants. I added in this example. I added the constants for being more easy. I even added the setName constant. I didn't add the fetch photo from API constant because in this case I didn't need it. I only use the constants in the reducer, but you could use it over there. So I think we have to do other changes, of course. For example, now remember before we had on change name we have this fetch photos that was completely inside the component, and now we have it as another dispatch action. So as you see, we dispatch the fetch photo from API query. That's the action we dispatch. Later, it will dispatch the add photo when it has the API information. Okay, because now, because for this example, I had to add a photograph URL into the component state. Now it's going to live into the Redux state. That's for this kind of examples. So now we have to do the reducer, and the reducer just is adding add photo constant, action constant, and in case that the action that is dispatched is the add photo, we will be updating, returning a new state with the new photo URL that it's the action property action URL. Okay, so that's how we could be building this this kind of examples. And now we have things. One nice why we have split this into two actions, because you really need to dispatch. From here you need to dispatch this action, and also because now this action only what does is do the fetching the API. This one updates the state with the URL. Imagine that if you want to just change the how it's fetched, you just have to change only this action creator. Remember, composition easier simple if it's every function makes one thing. And also testing. If we are doing a test, we just can mock up completely this action and just calling the add photo. We just add a photograph, we pass them, it's an URL from a local file, and we just can test it with, okay, here, instead of calling the fetch API, we just make a timeout and put it, I want to check that every time the photograph is changed, the view is changed in another place. I want to just test the other action creator. So there are ways you will be seeing little improvements about using things in Redux, adding side effects to be held in Redux. So you don't have, imagine that if you have a lot of components that make a lot of API calls from component mount and etc. You are like repeating a lot of code, and if you can have them inside of the Redux, so you will be making it easier to read the application. Okay, now we have the checker. What we have to do? We have to move the checker into a custom middleware. This is also done in the class, and here we will see this kind of a structure. Every time you want to create a reducer, you have to do it in this structure. A function that returns another function, then returns another function. There are three functions. This view is easier to see it in ECMAScript 6. Usually I will write it always like this, but for understanding it better, I think it's nicer this way. So this is the first function, the checker, that has the store instance as argument, and it's remember, I forgot to put the apply middleware creating the store, and that's the function that is called when you create a store and when you apply that third argument in the call for create a store, the apply middleware. So that first function is immediately called. So and we pass the store because that way a store has access to the middleware, to the store. Okay. The second function is the has an argument that it's a function. So next, it's called next, and it's a function that needs to be called with an action as parameter, as you see. So that action will be sent to the next middleware. So this is like, see it like, okay, it's the following action to be run after that middleware. So as you see, we have the store to give it to the middleware. We have the action, the next action to be thrown, and the next is the function that tell us what middleware comes later. Okay, so little by little going. Remember that's if you go to the apply middleware code, you will see like 10 lines of code for that function, but you will see carrying high order components, composition, and you might be like 1 week reading that code until you understand it, because of these kind of things. And the third function is just the action that which dispatch was called with. Remember that every time we dispatch the action, we dispatch it with that action. So that's just the action. So for finishing, inside of this, or here inside, we have all the logic of our middleware, what we want to do, and we can return different values depending on what we want to do. If we want to, after doing what we want to do, as an example of the fetch API, we fetch the API, and afterwards we want to dispatch the next action. So we just return an invocation to the next function with the next action we have to build. Of course, if we want to break things, for example, in the checker function, if Carlos is the button that it's clicked, we don't want to next action to be dispatched, so we just return the alert, or return null, or return some data. So we can, so that's why usually that's why it's important to put the depending on what the middleware does, the middleware's in order. Sorry. So that's the codes that we would be creating as we have a store folder, a reducer folder, an actions folder. We also create a middleware folder that you saw that in class also, that has the checker function, and we just add the usual code inside of it. And remember, the only thing that changes here is that when the if condition is not we don't go inside the if condition. We just don't use the dispatch from the store. We just do the next action, and Redux will be the one that dispatches the action. So once we do this, we completely remove all the check and dispatch functions and calls from our code, and we just apply middleware checker. Now you see how the code would be in the store, like that third argument of create a store is apply middleware, in this case checker and thunk. Before we just had thunk, and now we have checker and thunk, and all the middleware we are adding would go inside of this. So as you see now, button group just has a function that has unchanged name, and just dispatches two actions. The first one is store dispatch for fetch photo from API, and the other one to change the name. So now we have two actions, one a normal action creator, and the other one an action creator that dispatches another action inside. In the project, you will be building, I think, mostly of your actions this way. Depending on how you do it. Usually, the next action inside an action would be things for error handling and for updating little things from the state. So in the we will be seeing in examples. So that's it. Now we have a complete example where we are on change name dispatching these actions. But I would like to make a last improvement, because I'm clicking a button, clicking the name, and everything that comes out of clicking that button should be an action, because I'm just changing the name, and everything depends on the name. I could do lots of things. I could do that the set name action inside of it has another dispatches the fetch API, and the fetch API dispatches the other action. That would be a way to go. I just wanted to create another action that it says hello. Think about actions like functions. You can't build your software building functions with functions and inside of functions. So actions are that way. Are action creators. You just have to think about how you want to build them. And in this case, I thought it was funny to create another action that says hello, and say hello, takes the name, and inside, I think it's for you to see that now that we have this possibility of creating action creators that returns functions, we can dispatch multiple actions inside another action. So so you can see all the examples of how to build things, and inside of this say hello name, and as you see, it's called a say hello query, and that's the dataset binding in the bottom. And inside of here, we just set name, and afterwards we fetch photo from API. Okay. Another use cases for Redux Middleware. As you saw, we can use logging for logging every action that is run. A lot of crash reporting. There are lots of once you go into production with your applications, you will be very glad to be adding from the beginning crash reporting tools, and they are magnificent. I had opened the browser with a nice library. I just write it down to share with you. Crash reporting library, not library, website that you have for free for developing experience to every time your application crashes or your Redux store has goes into a catch, catches a promise. Whenever you want, you just can level it up it's into that website and have the crash reporting into your phone and be notified about every error in your application. So it's a very nice case where you want to try Redux middleware. I recommend it to you to maybe use it in your project. Of course, you have Redux middleware for routing, because we have React router, but there is a Redux React router where it helps us keep tracking of routes and Redux state. So, and that's it with middleware. As you saw, the handling asynchronous requests. So we have lots of cases where we want to use Redux middleware. I just wanted because we aren't very advanced in the lessons. People are like this week catching up with the end of Redux lessons, and it's the week that we should be beginning working on the project. I don't want to go with very complex webinars. Also, This and the before webinar, people didn't come into live webinars, so I prefer to do them with simple things. So I leave you at the end of the lesson a link to an article in Medium that talks about you are not using Redux middleware enough, and goes deeper in about this. And there are is also possibly one of the most underused features of Redux, and talks about that it's a very nice encapsulation for store behavior. Okay, of course that will help you making testing a lot easier, as I said before. And that article has 4 examples. I just wanted to show you here quickly the 2 examples that I think are easier to see in this webinar. The first one is encapsulating your API, and the second one is local storage and cookies. So going to encapsulating your API before, because we have been using we have been fetching an API. I think it's an example that feels right to have it here. So first of all, this is the middleware, and you can see they add another function inside. So it doesn't have only the store next action functions. It has another where we give this fetch middleware the fetch implementation. So it's like, okay, I can pass the middleware the fetch implementation I want to use. So I want to use the fetch API from JavaScript, or maybe I can use the Axios library. So it's like another nice I don't know the name, layer of encapsulation, and so it's very nice. So here this is like and they want to inside the actions. This is an example action. We want to fetch things, but we don't want to be adding the headers or the tokens in every call. So I just want to fetch this website with this ID and with the method gets, but the headers token and every kind of headers that I want to have them inside our application, that might be better than in middleware. So if someone comes here, the code is cleaner because we see, okay, just await, it's asynchronous, so we just use the async awaits. Remember that this is like for after promises, they built this nice way of dealing with promises, the async wait mechanism. So it's just like instead of having then guts inside, we just add the async signature to the functions, and this will await until it gets the result, and nothing below here. It's run until this gets resolved. So as you see, we just see, okay, I want just to make a get method call to the API website.com with ID that it's passed for this user. But what is coming here? In our place, we are creating the store, obviously with the middleware, and we are passing the fetch middleware, and window.fetch is like the way you have to, usually when you use the fetch API from the developer console, you just type fetch, but fetch is as all of mostly all of the functions provided from JavaScript, they are attached to document or to window or to console. So to access it from the code, they just add the window.fetch. So That's why that this becomes in this function the fetch implementation function, and this is why when we return the fetch implementation, it's like calling the fetch. So it's like fetch URL and params. So what this does is, okay, if action type, every time we are inside an action and this action is dispatching a fetch, and fetch, see, look at this, we dispatch an action creator. This action creator has the type fetch, so every time that we dispatch an action with that type, the middleware will say, oh, wait, I have to do things. If not, just go to the next action. But if we are dispatching a fetch action, okay, I just retrieve the URL params from the action because I just give it to them with here, like URL and params are the first and the second parameters of this fetch action creator. Later, I just take the token from the store. Think about this is like internal tokens that will be sent in header, so they are public. They are like they live in the browser, so they can be in the store. Remember that if there are secret API keys, if you put them in the store, it's like putting them in the local storage. It's like putting them in some places that people will be able to get to them. And here it's just using the sets params header token, and now we have this header, this token in the headers, and we just can fetch that URL and that's with that method, and we will be sending the token in the header. So I think it's a very nice implementation. That's why I didn't want to make it complex, my API implementation, because they have this nice example of doing things. I think about this kind of side effects you want to do, and think about, yeah, in a lot of cases where we can use middleware to make code easier to read and easier to test. And the second example is just local storage and cookies. And this is, for example, updating a token. So see about this, we just get the token from the local storage. Yeah, we just save it before, and we have initial state, we have the middlewares, and we create the store. So this is like usually the store creation. Store creation is created with the reducers, with the initial state, and the middlewares. And middlewares are just this function middleware, okay? And the initial is, and the initial state is just, okay, depending on where we are, we just set the token, or we come from the default state. So what does this middleware does? Okay, before dispatching the action, as we see, it does. Look at that, because we are not returning nothing. We are just, okay, get the previous token, because previous token is before I change anything, before the reducer takes the action until the end. Later, dispatch next the action. So okay, and after that, now gets the next token, the updated token from the get state. So before changing the store, get the token. After changing the store, get the same token. And now, if they are different, yeah, it has changed. So we are updating every time the token. So if we have an action where we are, imagine that this is like the token for the user, the good user token, that it's identified, and we don't want to be like repeating goes to the server, but in a moment we log out and log in and switch from the from one user to the other. And there we know that our middleware takes care about updating the token in the local storage without us doing anything. I just I leave you here the links for you to check the other examples and read the original author, because I think they are the best examples. As always, questions time. I think today I will finish before the hour. I'm going to try to make these webinars like 40 minutes, 45, because I think that I went into 1 hour, and because no questions were asked, and maybe I will try to make them shorter. So as always, the resources here, I just checked the official Redux documentation. Also, that is the you using Redux Middleware enough codes. And as always, thank you for being part of Udacity, this Udacity Nano degree. Thank you for your efforts. I've seen that some of you have been catching up from the previous weeks. That's, I think, that have been a little more slower and you are catching up. So hope you begin to read the final part of Redux and these webinars and begin the project, so we can share ideas and focus on it. I will begin the project also over the weekend, because I didn't make this project when I did the webinar. So I think it's nice to think about it from scratch without knowing it. So thank you for your time. As always, stay audacious. Bye. Bye bye.